Then now I would like to invite a couple of panelists on stage. We're going to do a panel about creative risks, how indie developers innovate where AAAs can't. So for that, I'd like to invite to the stage Yuliya Oleshko from Rarepixels, Bygrave from Humble Bundle, and Mafalda Duarte from Nerd Monkeys. And joining us digitally is Tarja Porkka-Kontturi. Sorry, I'm butchering your name. Porkka-Kontturi from Global Game Jam. It's a difficult name for me to pronounce. All right, let me just do a little bit of a setup. Thank you so much for joining me live and digital for this panel where we're going to talk a bit about creativity for indie studios, how indie developers can innovate where AAAs can't. It's quite a provocative title of this talk. But yeah, let's first dive straight into it with a little bit of introductions about ourselves. Maybe we can start with Tarja online, and then we'll follow it live. So Tarja, please start.
So, hi everyone, and thank you for having me digitally with you. I couldn't make it to Helsinki today. I'm in northern Finland. I'm Tarja Porkka-Kontturi. I work as Director of Communications at Global Game Jam, and I do games, PR, and marketing at games branding, and I do this and that around accessibility and diversity and inclusion things, for example, at Being Games Finland.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Mafalda Duarte. I work for, I'm the studio director and producer at Nerd Monkeys. We're in the studio based in Lisbon, Portugal. We also develop a publishing branch where we work with other indies to bring short games to life. And that brought the short games collection. And yeah, this is me.
Hello, everybody. Oh, wow. I can hear myself in contrary to the previous panel discussion. My name is Yuliya. I'm a business development manager of Rarepixels. It's an indie game studio from Canary Islands. We are doing casual games. You probably heard about Planes Control and 2 Minutes of Space. If not, please download and rate us with 5 stars. Besides working for Rarepixels, I'm a Women in Games ambassador, and I'm Women Tech Maker ambassador. It's a part of Google structure. So I'm here to tell you about what is happening in our studio and how I think indie games can innovate in the way that AAA companies cannot. Do you want 2 microphones?
I'm good, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm from Humble Games, which is the publishing arm of Humble Bundle. We have published over 30 titles from independent developers over the last couple of years, and last year were rated as the 3rd highest quality publisher on Metacritic. I myself am Bygrave. I am the Director of Publishing Strategy and Growth, which means that I work on strategies for our long-term growth plans that are in line with our values and sustainable for our business.
All right, and before I forget myself, my name is Martine Spaans, and next to hosting the track this morning, I'm also an indie publisher where we focus on casual games. So a way to dive into the topic of innovation and to illustrate a bit about what we're going to talk about today, I was wondering if you can name an example of a very innovative game or game mechanic, something that you've seen in the last 6 months.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, why not? I've got to mention Cult of the Lamb, I think, because I think it's a great example, and I can't really imagine a roguelike management sim following a possessed lamb coming out of the AAA or traditional space. That could only really come from the indie space. So I think that's got to be my example.
Okay. You know what? I feel kind of weird here because I'm basically with 2 ladies who know about indie games much more than I know about them. Yeah. Okay. No, because you know it globally. I don't want to talk about mechanics. I want more about the entrance in the market. So I think that the most fascinating way to innovate and to become very famous is the game Among Us that basically grew from indie game studio and became amazing huge hit and still remains to be indie game indie game with an indie game company. So for me, the most amazing trends, the most amazing innovations that indie games are doing is in terms of influencer marketing. So let me give this as an example, okay?
Okay, and for me, it's a game that released last year, but in the recent months, Before Your Eyes came to Netflix games, and so now you can play it on mobile as well. And I think it's a game that has eye tracking as the story mechanic moving forward, and I think also bringing that type of game and that type of storytelling to something as accessible as you could download it through your Netflix account, and for that type of crowd. I would say that's a story innovation, mechanic innovation, and also like a partnership innovation as well.
A discovery innovation
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. Tarja, you must see a lot of very interesting innovations through Global Game Jam.
Yeah, I gotta say that we have now going on multiplayer game jam with collaboration with Photon Engine, and there's a lot of really cool new stuff that I haven't seen before in the making, and that will be really interesting when finally we see all the games that come out from that jam. It would be so cool to play those. But I gotta mention Cult of the Lamb as well. Like, it's something, I love that game. It's something really unique and really rare, yet so somehow very simple. And then with AA side, I of course have to mention Metal Hellsinger, which is a completely new kind of rhythm game that we've seen past years.
All right. So, a little insights for the audience. This is like we're basically composing your new download list here. Innovation can really sort of come from anywhere. We're specifically talking about innovation from indie studios here, but innovation can of course also come from well-funded production studios. But do you see a clear difference in how the topic of innovation is explored between these?
Yeah, I can go, and I think we might all agree in the panel that budgets are different, and so we also need to be more mindful of what that means. Like in terms, so normally the big type of innovation difference is the technology innovation that AAAs can bring, but also and indie games sometimes can be more niche and can do experiences that might be more story-wise to a specific market, and also I would say mechanic-wise. So like you can have, again, a mechanic like what I just described of eye tracking, but also things like folding trails. There's just like you're just folding your way through. That's puzzle games like that are not for everyone, and so I think that element of mechanics there are very labor intense even to play. Like you need to be involved and engage with what that experience will bring to you, and it's not something that any casual player can just jump into. I think that's part of what indies can bring, but also and AAAs needs to have that experience that has a more broad market and needs to think more about what is that easier UX experiences and that usability, I would say as well.
Mm-hmm. In a way, I will repeat you, but at the same time, maybe it will be slightly different. Like, while seeing why AAA companies are innovating and why small companies are innovating, you will see why we are basically different. AAA companies, financial result is always the main result that should be there. So big companies are innovating in order to increase incomes. No, but this is logical, right? Small companies don't have that budgets, and they don't have that amount of people, and they're not strictly connected only with final financial results. So a lot of indie game studios are innovating for the sake of innovation, because I don't know any person working for an indie game studio that is not a gamer, that is not into gaming, that is not a part of the culture. So basically we're innovating because we're playing a game, we see, wow, something is missing there. So we're creating another game that can cover the need that we see as personal. So basically we're marketing people, and at the same time we're final users. So in a lot of cases, we're innovating not for the sake of higher financial result, and I don't mean it negative or positive. It's just another way of seeing the situation, right? We innovate because we want to see better products in the market. And then we're checking cost per install, lifetime value, blah, 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 how it's matching, and so on. So in a lot of cases, you can see indie game landscape as the impressionists in the art. Like, we see the reality in different way, and that is why we want to bring this new reality to the world. If it will sell or not, we never know. So that is why this is how our innovations are coming. This is one point of view. Another point of view, as we don't have the budgets of big companies, it's logical. We're trying to innovate more on the local level or using just the resources that we have. And this is how basically, I don't know why I have now in mind this game Fill the Fridge, when basically analyzing the trends on TikTok, push the company to make the game. This is what we are also doing. We are checking on the local level, and we are creating something that could be appreciated by people around us. If we are talking about a team of 2 people, it's clear we're doing something for 1,000 of people. If we're talking about a team of 5 people, 10 people, then it's like, okay, it's a continent and so on. So, and it's clear that our innovations in a lot of cases, like you mentioned, eye tracking, in case of indie games, they're normally cheap in terms of execution, but they are full of creativity. And then 2 things are happening. First thing, if this innovation is amazingly cool, it's... Hi. Sorry, just like... Yeah. If this innovation really makes sense for big companies, then big companies are also implementing it, and then in a lot of cases, people are forgetting that it was actually born within a small team. If it doesn't make sense financially, then it's just staying on the level of a small indie team, and then, yeah, it can be mentioned as example. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, I think I agree with my fellow panelists here that AAAs and indies absolutely coexist. It's not an either or, and I think all gamers, or at least from our research, the vast majority of AAA gamers also enjoy a good quantity of indie games. But I agree with what you're saying around the technology, around the AAAs is a different type of innovation versus perhaps the more narrative or unique perspective that indie games can bring. And to use an example from one of Humble's games, because why not? I think Unpacking is a really good example of this, right? It is at its core a puzzle game, an absolutely solid and very good puzzle game. But what makes it really different, what really allowed it to break out and become a runaway hit, was that it was telling a story purely through unpacking boxes. You know, that's something that is a very unique way of telling a narrative. And that's what I really love about the indie space, is it has room for all these different perspectives, all these different narratives that are not kind of held back in the same way that a huge studio with a huge budget and therefore needs to hit a large total addressable market does, because it's smaller studios, and therefore, you know, commercially the budgets from the game mean that you can address a more niche audience and tell a far more unique story.
Absolutely. Tarja?
Yeah, I completely agree with everyone and everything they said there before me. And like, I think the main thing also, like one of the main things also is that as like for indie game developers, there's not necessarily those pressuring deadlines, and there's like usually there's no one like breathing on their necks trying to boost the sales, as was said there before. Like, there's probably less money to do what they're doing, but there's often less pressure, and there's less expectations, if you don't count those that developers put them like on themselves. But of course, indie game developers want their games to sell as well. Like, we all need to make a livelihood if it's not just a hobby. But like, we are talking about so different numbers when we are talking about AAA versus indie game. But past years, we've seen really big indie games though. And there's been this discussion around what is an indie game studio after all. Like, when they have big budgets and they have a lot of people working on a game, but that's of course totally different conversation.
Yeah. And also talking a little bit about this and about sort of the motivations behind innovation, I was thinking, could PR be a motivation to really, find an innovative game or an innovative game mechanic or something? Because as an indie, you don't have a lot of marketing budget, as we discussed. So, you might sort of want to lean more into the aspect of getting as many press attention as you want. So could that be a motivation?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think the
Yes,
bottom
we
line, the bottom line though, is that you want to have a game that's good and fun to play. And the barometer that we have internally as a publisher is, why should this game be made? What makes it different? So absolutely, having something kind of really core that is very different about your game is something you should be leaning into in marketing. But my personal view is that the focus should be on a great game, and then you identify what is it that makes my game great, and then you lean into that in your communication.
Absolutely, I'm totally agree with you, yes. But this is exactly when indie game studios actually come into play, right? Because, as I mentioned before, people who are working for indie games, they are normally gamers. Are there people here working for indie game studios? 1, 2, 3.
A few.
Three. Okay, and who you are playing games? Are you gamers? You see, so basically like all the people who are... I know a lot of colleagues who are working for big companies, they're not gamers. And this is beautiful. They're selling product, they're developing product, blah, blah. Indie gamers, they're playing games and they're creating something. So this is, what we're talking about.
So, we already sort of touched a little bit upon, the risk-taking, things like that. And the tough part about innovation is, of course, the risk involved and the fact that investors and publishers might not be too keen on that. So can you share any tips when it comes to the commercial part of making really innovative content?
Yeah, I think it connects to what we just talked about, PR as well. So in the sense that I think one big mitigator is to have a community behind your game and behind your studio. Community-based marketing, and it's one of the most important tools for indie games, I would say, because that is people that go around with you and with your game and promoting it for you. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you can do whenever you have, again, a smaller studio, a niche market, and things like that, because you can better communicate with your audience and adapt your game also to hit the things that you think you're missing, because you're saying like, okay, indie gamers sometimes are doing things for themselves, and that can. I forgot the name of everyone on this panel.
Tarja?
But I would say for Global Game Jam, you probably see that a lot, like especially when people are starting out, to think about the games that they want to play, but not thinking about the user at all. And
Definitely, that's always the
always
what I want to see.
Yeah.
What kind of game I want to play.
And we see that a lot, especially in students as well, or juniors just coming into market. And I think a big important thing is not about what I want, but it's about a little bit of the stories I want to tell, but also if they relate to someone else and if they relate to an audience. And so I would start there and then move forward to what other elements you can bring to the table in terms of mitigating their investment, because that way you can go to a Humble Bundle or you can go to another person and say, okay, I'm bringing all of these people with me. And for example, it's part of what we did in the short games collection, because marketing a short games collection that is like an hour long to pass 5 games, because there's games with 10 minutes there, it's not easy for nowadays, as we know, that they're not as respected, those short experiences. And one thing that we did is every indie that was coming to the table, they were all bringing their own audiences and their place, and so we do this cross-marketing amongst ourselves, and bringing those audience with us, and that's a way to mitigate cost and risk.
Yes, exactly. You want? While talking about marketing of indie games and of indie game studio, as you just said, like we don't. I can talk from my perspective as an indie game, as a business development manager. In our particular case, we never used any paid user acquisitions. Okay, so we're not paying for downloads globally. It has financial reasons. It has also psychological reasons. I don't know, you can call it like this. And this is what defined basically indie game studios. So we work a lot with the community, and this is exactly the thing. All the social media, all the gaming platforms and so on. It's important for us to have very deep connection with the gamers, and it also what brings us a lot of inspiration for the innovation. Because we are talking basically like, if you're writing us a review, 100% you don't have a robotic answer, you have an answer from somebody of our team. If you are writing on any platform, in any social media, naming us, asking us, talking about games, brands, blah, 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 we are people who are answering your questions. There is no person from outside hiring who is between like 3 other jobs is answering also your questions. So we are always the voice behind the company. It has a lot of advantages because it's helping us, as I mentioned like 2 sentences before, to innovate, and it's helping us to build a really alive, healthy community. Because we know what is happening to the gamers, we know what they don't like, we're changing our games systematically, and it's helping us also to grow in terms of downloads, in terms of audience, in terms of our own image in the market, if you want to call it like this. Mm-hmm.
And looking at it from a publisher perspective, that's of course part of what we are doing for our partners is we are identifying what is the commercial opportunity for this and how can we make sure that we are marketing it in a way that is correct for the game, that highlights all of the advantages and all of the fun elements of the gameplay. But I think what it is also important to remember is that independent developers have the freedom to be able to really hone in on that core gameplay mechanic that we were mentioning within the last question. And it's okay to dial back some complexities within your game in order to absolutely nail that and get that right. And sometimes that's necessary in order to sort of right size your budgets and your timescales along with kind of what the commercial opportunity may look like without making any compromises to what makes your game special.
Tarja?
Yeah, I only have one thing to add basically to this, that don't, okay, I always say don't pay influencers to promote your game, because that doesn't really lead to, of course there's a chance that this like one influencer happens to love your game, and it grows to be like a bigger promotion and longer time promotion, but it doesn't really, it harms you in a long run. And especially when you don't have big marketing budgets as like indie game developer, you probably don't have any, or you might have like a few €100 or something. Try to use those more wisely. Don't pay to people to say good things about your game, because that won't last and it will kind of fall at some point. It's been seen so many times, too many times before. Yeah, sincere feedback is always best.
I totally agree with you. Thank you so much for pointing this out. I love the idea of influencer marketing a lot. It's booming. It's helping to sell your game to the right audience. But I can give you an example from my personal professional life. At the very beginning, we paid to 2 influencers to do amazing videos promoting our games to the audience. We saw amazingly low amount of downloads. The audience was the right. Influencer was the right. Price was quite okay, I would say. But we saw absolutely no interest to our brand, and we saw absolutely, and uninstall rates were quite high when it comes to those downloads that we gained this way. But at the same time, just because, I don't know, like 1 month later, we faced enormous boom of our games in Brazil and in Mexico. We had no idea why. And then later, due to social listening, we find out that 2 amazingly strong, huge influencers presented our games. they didn't talk to us, they didn't ask us, they didn't inform, they just presented because they were excited because of our games. It caused amazing boom in Latin America, it's still there, this boom, I mean, and thanks to people who didn't pay, they just really strongly believed in our games.
Yeah,
so thank you so much for pointing.
They just naturally became advocates basically for the game, just for the love of it. Yeah,
absolutely, this is what I mean. The best influencers are those who are not paid. This is people who believe in your brand and yes, they want to share. Absolutely, and this is what we're talking about. You're working with community. You are always there. You're always listening to their feedback. They're starting to believe your games. Besides the fact that they like their games, they like you as a studio, and then they become the strongest ambassadors of your game, of your brand.
I'll just say, just to finish the mitigation of risk, I think it's always you as a studio being a studio that people want to work with, right? Or you are developers. Absolutely. So not just in the sense of your gamers and your audience cares for you, but again, the relationship you have with your publisher that you were talking about and the relationship you have with other partners. I think if you are something that are trustworthy, that people know that you are going to try to do the best for the game and not the best for yourself or for your ego of what you want to tell and things like that, that also help to understand, okay, I'm taking a risk on this game and this project, but these people are going along with me, right, as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like you cannot buy love, is basically the bottom line. So I was also wondering, I mean, we talked a little bit about connecting with your audience, but like before you even publish the game, I mean, if you have an innovative type of gameplay or theme, there's got to be sort of a way to test it out before you really release it. Like, you know, if you're really going somewhere with this idea or if no one gets it at all. So, like, what would be the best way to test, sort of see if your game innovation really is a viable product?
I can talk. Okay, so there are two ways to answer this question. If you're a big studio, if you're a studio working with a lot of game developers and so on, it's clear you have the name. So basically you're starting to raise awareness of your game, you're starting to raise interest to your game, half a year, 1 year in advance. It's clear. Everybody are waiting for the Stalker as the game, Stalker 3? Correct me if I'm wrong. Everybody are waiting for the games. If we are talking about big studios. What is happening to indie studios, and it's unfortunately reality, if the idea is amazingly cool and people still have to wait half a year, 1 year till the game is launched, then a bigger company is coming, still an idea, we know a lot about these cases, it was like last year, 2-3 cases, and then it's a kind of failure for the small studio that promoted the game, promoted the idea, promoted the create this engagement around the game, and then the big company is coming and launching basically the same game. This is sad. That is why when it comes to small, we're talking about indies today, so we prefer not to talk too much about our upcoming games. Like right now we have 2 games in the pipeline. We're planning to launch them this winter. One of them will be amazingly entertaining, educative and casual game at the same time. Another one will be historical game. We will talk about it later once they're launched, but we like to do a soft launch. So basically we're launching it in Canada, we're testing it there, we're working with the community there, and then seeing how it's going, we're already slightly changing it and launching globally.
I think connecting with soft launches is just, there's like different ways that you can do that, depending also on what your game is. I know I'm a suspect here, but I would say short games is a great way to go because there are a lot of indies that, for example, did it a version of like a short thing that they put on itch.io, or then it came from a game jam type of thing, or they just tested out those ideas and those mechanics in an environment that it wasn't still known or they wasn't still meant to be a bigger game, and they could explore that. And another thing is just pitch your game, like go to events and talk to other people and talk to industry people as well, and see if people are excited for your idea or not. Because I think also connecting to other people that are in your space and that understand those markets and understand what players are looking for, it's always a great idea to gauge interest and that experience.
And I think building off of what both of you have said around, how you find testers and how you get feedback on your game, I think going outside of your usual circle is very valuable. Get different insights, different inputs from people that try different games. And of course, some people, not everyone's going to love the genre, but it can provide very valuable feedback. So, for example, let's say you're building a 3D platformer and you're amazing at 3D platformers. Why not try giving it to someone who's not and see how accessible your game is? Now, it might be that's what you want. You want it to be really hard. You have Cuphead in your brain, and that's how you want your game to be. But make sure that you're going into that with your eyes open and knowing that that's exactly what you're doing. And by getting kind of diverse input, that means you get different feedback so that you are completely aware of what it is you're bringing to market.
And you can start the branding and community building already on that phase, like really early phase. You can, for example, create Discord server and build your Discord community there, and let those people to give some feedback and maybe playtest the product in really early stages of development. And that those people in, for example, your Discord server can create the base for your community in the future. So I've seen that being a pretty effective way for many indie game developers.
Absolutely.
You started talking about Discord server, and I realized that I forgot to tell something else. We also have a Discord as one of the ways to work with our community. But another amazing thing for the new unpublished games is actually Pocket Gamer Connects and events like this one. Because when you're bringing prototypes here, people who are coming, like, basically, this is the target audience here, right? So you're bringing your prototypes, you're bringing here, you're bringing to Gamescom. All the big exhibitions, they're always offering free places for indie game developers to show their game, to showcase, to talk about their games, and so on. So basically, just collecting this feedback in the exhibitions is an amazing way to understand if the game should keep going or you have to modify it or maybe just forget about it. Mm-hmm.
Right. I think that pretty much wraps it up for our panel. Unless there's any questions from the audience, I think we have time for about one question. Right.
Hello. Thanks for sharing your insights. Really valuable. I would like to ask, well, in the early stages of indie development, that you have 3 or 4 friends and you don't really have any funding and people need to eat and people have full-time jobs, maybe studying. How do you get that initial money for being able to support, let's say, even a prototyping process, even a first demo? How can you get that money? Or you don't?
Yeah, it just depends a lot on where you are as well, because there's a lot of countries that have scholarship type programs or things like that that they can that they support. I don't know, culture grants, things like that in your area. There is the classic, well, you put your money forward in terms of like you're supporting yourself in another way, and I would say just like look for competitions as well, because there are grants, there are things like that that can be a kickoff for a small project.
Okay, so we're a team of 3 people. Still, we have 7 million downloads of our games. We start our game Planes Control. It was our side hobby, side job, I don't know how to call it. We were working for big IT companies in Munich, and basically all the money that we used, it was our money that we saved after paying for living and so on. So we were working, I remember I was sending my press releases at 3 in the morning, then at 8 I was waking up, then I was going to sleep, logically. At 8 in the morning I was going to work for Microsoft, because it was my main job. And I mean, like, I think that this initial budget depends totally on you. It depends how much, why you need this budget. Like, if you're a developer, you're developing, this is your time, you invest in your time. I'm a marketing person, so I invested all my time I was having in creating any kind of PR campaigns, guerrilla marketing, partisan marketing, working with all the people. I remember even when our game was downloaded, I was so stressed, I was so not believing in my marketing ideas behind that I said I will pay with coffee for each download in my company. It was amazingly scary. If I'm thinking now, cost per install €2, which was coffee, it's like, pff, it's crazy, but I was stressed out. I didn't know what to do. Then the game went amazingly cool. So you have basically, you need a person who's developing, who will be investing their time. You need a person who is slightly understanding how to do it in terms of community or marketing. And it's also amazingly cool if you have anybody among your friends who are influencers, who can influence. I'm not talking about influencers like, I don't know, Richard Branson or Elon Musk. No, you just need like local influencers, people who are going to student clubs, to game associations, blah, blah, who will talk there. Also amazing ways to, we were participating in indie game pitches at all the possible events, at all the possible in all the possible geographical areas. It gave additional visibility, and once you have a good, it's very important, there is right to have a good product. If you have a good product, it will go amazingly cool. If you have a product, then you need a lot of money for, for paid user acquisition. Yes, and another, just last thing, and I'm giving the microphone to you. It's also very important to start working with all the local communities that are dedicated to game. You have Association of Game Developers School, go there. You have Google development communities, they're everywhere. If you're going to Google, it's clear, we're working for iOS, and yes, exactly. So I'm just coming now, for example, from Google Development Congress in Madrid. I was there yesterday. It's amazing. It's a community of people full of ideas, open, ready to help you to promote your games and so on. So, but you have to believe in your idea. This is what we are talking about, and this is what indies are amazingly strong at. You believe that this is the project that will sell, and then you will go. And the budget is not really matter at the beginning. And then you'll go for pitching and getting money from funds and so on.
I'll be succinct. I know that we're over time. Number one, funds. Mafalda mentioned that there are a lot of funds within Europe. All the different countries have their own. Speak to trade bodies to get advice on how to pitch, etc. Second, obviously, a publisher. You do not need a demo to pitch your game to a publisher. As long as you can show, what your idea is, you can demonstrate your values, you can demonstrate your commitment. We have signed games without demos. So solid pitch is always worth your time. Then, of course, you have community funding. So, for example, Kickstarter, and we've actually signed games that have started as Kickstarters. And, of course, early access as well are ways to be able to help fund your game. So there is a variety of ways. You find what works for you.
Okay. Sorry to skip you, Tarja, but we really need to close it out. Thank you so much also for joining us digitally, hopefully next time again in real life. Thank you so much also for joining me on stage. Give them a warm applause.